Hi, everyone. Nice to see all of you, and thanks for having me here. Like you said, I'm Kyle Leach. I'm a registered geologist in California, and I work for Sierra Streams Institute. I'll talk a little bit about Sierra Streams and then about the mining toxins and the type of subtoxins that there are and how we are working to clean them up and keep them out of the streams. So Sierra Streams Institute's been around for, I think, 18 or 19 years. It was organized around some community people that got together when they were rebuilding the Pine Street Bridge, and they were concerned about digging in the creek and sedimentation and what kind of toxins might be released from that. And so it kind of has grown over the years, and we have about 13 or 14 permanent employees and over 30 volunteers who do river monitoring all over the Deer Creek Basin, and we've recently expanded to the Bear River Basin as well. So we have over 30 sites that are monitored every month for river stream quality and things like that. So we are really into citizen science, where we're getting volunteers and to do actual scientific work, collecting data, bringing it back, and sharing it in a format that people can use and share with the community. So the work that I do, I came on about 7 years ago after working in the private sector for many years, and my focus has been on cleaning up abandoned mines, and especially in this area. We've gotten some good grants from the US EPA and the Sierra Fund, or the Sierra Nevada Conservancy. And so we've worked on quite a few mines. One is the Stiles Mill, which is just below the Pine Street Bridge on the far side from town, and then also the Providence mine, which is one of the biggest mines in the area. So the types of toxins that you get in these mines are basically, what happens is the gold was put into the rocks many millions of years ago, but it was like a liquid injection of hot liquids into the rock, and the gold and the quartz tend to come together, and that's what they're going after when they're mining. But that liquid, the same liquid that brought in the gold, also had other metals, many different kinds of metals, and the most toxic ones that we find around here are lead and arsenic in general, some cadmium and a few other metals, but generally it's usually mercury, arsenic, and lead that you're looking for. The mercury was introduced later in the process of recovering the gold, so it was actually mined over in the Coast Range and brought over here to amalgamate the gold and aid in the recovery of the gold. So the mercury I'll talk about in a second, but the other metals tend to be fairly stable when they're underground, but once they get brought up to the surface, they get oxidized, they break down, the metals are released, and they tend to erode mostly as particles into the soil, into the creeks. And that's how you get the metal contamination in the creeks. Not so much solubility. In other kinds of mining, like for example, copper mining, you have a lot more acidic conditions, and then there's a lot more soluble metals that can go into the water. But we don't really have copper mines around here. There's some down in the foothills, that not too big, but there's some in Spenceville and that area. So basically the assessments and cleanups of the metals that I'm looking at, the real focus is to stop the erosion of those particles into the creek, and also to mainly, the other reason we're getting EPA grants to protect human health. So we're trying to keep people from being exposed to the metals, and then trying to keep it out of the creek. So we've done quite a bit of water monitoring. It's kind of expensive to do metals testing of the water, so we don't do a lot of that, but associated with my projects, we will test for the metals in the water upstream, right adjacent to our sites, and then downstream. And what we found is generally when the water is clear, you don't get much metal. The metals are almost non-existent in the water, but when it's cloudy and stormy times, then you're seeing a lot of metals in the water, sometimes over the, well over the drinking water standards. So takeaway from that is don't drink the water, don't swim in the water when it's cold and freezing and flooding anyway. So not too many people doing that. But the more hazardous thing would be mercury, and the mercury that was put into used in the mining process has eroded into the creek over the years, and it was lost during the process. So over 10 million pounds of mercury has been lost into the Sierra Nevada area, and that mercury turns into methyl mercury by a complicated process I won't go into, and it gets into the food chain. It gets biomagnified each time it goes up the food chain. So the larger fish, especially things like bass in the reservoirs, are the things that have the most mercury in them that people should avoid eating. So there's fishing advisories for people not to eat the fish. So that's probably the worst mining toxin exposure route, is by people eating fish. And unfortunately, the people, like the Hmong people who go out and subsistence fish, they're not really reading those advisories. So it's kind of hard to get to the people that are really the most affected. But for example, the Sierra Fund is doing a lot of work on that, on doing surveys of anglers and getting the word out and getting postings and things like that. So I could go on in all kinds of directions, but I think I'll open it up to questions anyone has on any topic like that. What do you think Michael wants me to talk more about?
So we have a mic here. It's nice if people do have questions or things you want to maybe ask while we have Ben here. If you want, just step up to the mic.
Thank you. I always learn so much every time I come here. I have been measuring people in Chico area with their heavy metal. Mm-hmm. So I was really shocked how many people have mercury, cadmium, and lead. One kid has lead. I thought it was from the school, but now we may have a reason for from the water contamination. So how much water has been cleared, mediated so far? Are they still contaminated, or we're achieving certain level of decrease now?
Well, I can tell you about a few. One of the main sources that I know of metals getting into the creeks are drain tunnels from old mines, and a couple of those have been remediated. The one is the Magenta drain that comes out of the Empire mine, and that's a really good success story. There was a lot of toxins that were going right through Memorial Park in Grass Valley, where people were playing in it. They didn't even know that it was toxic, and they found out, and they closed off the creek for a while, and then they started rerouting that water through some ponds. It's a passive remediation system where the water goes over limestone rocks and the metals drop out, and they have plants that absorb metals, and it's you can see it along the road that goes up. I forgot the name of the road that goes up towards Empire Road. Yeah, up by just below the Empire mine. There's some big ponds there, so that's a success story. There's also the North Star mine in Grass Valley too. But the work I do is mainly keeping erosion of those materials into the creek, and so we have done that on several sites in Deer Creek, and I know that there's a lot of work that's being done at Malakoff Diggings for the mercury that's coming in there, and it's an ongoing process. So I think if you looked at the amount of money that was taken out of the gold rush, it would probably cost all that money to clean it all up the best. So
yes. Have you ever studied any kind of bacteria that cleans up heavy metals?
Bacteria, not so much. I know that they are kind of causing the problem with mercury. So, bacteria tend to make the metals more available into the food chain. So I don't really know how we've done stuff with plants and trying to get plants to absorb the metals. Mm-hmm. And we've learned a lot about it. We haven't had a lot of success, but we do have some leads, and people are doing studies on it and stuff like that too.
I see. Are you helping other mining sites like Happy Camp, along the Klamath River? Are you guys connected? Any organization is doing cleanup there?
I'm not too aware of the details up there. I know I've been following taking the dams out up on the Klamath River and those issues. But I don't know too much about mining cleanups up there.
So we may have to
know about them. There's one really bad mine up in north of Redding, the Iron Mountain. Has the lowest pH ever recorded in nature, and there's actually bacteria living in that, and that's an old copper mine where a lot of metals are leaching out, and there's a big cleanup that's gone on there too. So it's a big Superfund site.
Thank you.
So I do know about that. So, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, sure.
Has any heavy metal testing ever been done on Bitney Springs water?
Not that I know of. I think it is tested by the county, and I've never heard of it being really bad. I don't know the specific results.
But you do think it's tested? Because I've heard nobody tests the water.
I don't know. I think that the county environmental health may have information on that. I've heard that they've put up warnings before and people tear them down because if people want to drink that water. So I personally don't drink it because I have not seen results.
Right. Yeah.
So-
I'm concerned because I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my other question is that I do regular heavy metal testing with hair analysis,
Mm-hmm.
and I noticed an increase in arsenic when I moved to my current location, which is well water. And
That's a good point. Yeah.
I switched over to RO, and the arsenic levels dropped.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked my landlords about it, and they told me that the well water was tested by the county and rated as just fine. So how did that happen?
That's a good point. Arsenic in groundwater is an issue in this area. It's not everywhere, but certain mines, certain locations, there is arsenic. It's naturally occurring usually, but it's usually in the areas where mining has occurred because the arsenic was concentrated during the mining process. So what I've seen is that people, particularly around the Banner Lava Cap mine up on Banner Mountain, there's higher arsenic there. And so when you do drill a well, it's required to be tested by the county for arsenic and other metals. And if it's elevated, then they require you to do some kind of treatment, which is a pretty simple process, but it costs money, to have that treatment. Reverse osmosis, like you said, is one.
So, but how could I show up with arsenic when the county had given it a pass and said the water was fine?
It's possible that you were getting small amounts and then it just accumulates in your body. One of the things about arsenic is it's toxic and it accumulates at very, very low concentrations. And the water quality standard for drinking water